everybody, it's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today for an Australian Readathon recommendations video. So throughout the month of November, I am co-hosting the Australian Readathon, the aim of which is to get everybody talking about, thinking about, and reading books by Australian authors. I will link my announcement video down below so you can go and check that out and get all of the information that you will need if you'd like to join. I will also link my amazing co-host channels. They are Meredith from Reading with Merb, Steph from Novelty Corner, and Ren from The Reading Ren. You should go and subscribe to all three of these fabulous people. They are amazing content creators, really wonderful people, good friends, and I highly recommend that you go and subscribe to all their channels. We all put up an announcement video recently, and we all have either in our announcement videos done some recommendations or are doing some recommendations for the Readathon. For the Readathon, there are two ways you can participate. You can either just read a book by an Australian author, or you can follow the bingo board and try and meet some of or all of the prompts on the bingo board. I have got a bunch of books just down here that I'm going to talk to you about. I was going to go through the bingo board and recommend a book for each thing, but quite a few of these would work for a few different places on the bingo board, which is great because you can fit multiple prompts onto one book. Like I said, I know that Steph is definitely putting up her recommendations video. Meredith put up a bunch of different recommendations in her announcement video, and so did Ren. So go and get recommendations off them, because obviously I have not included every single book by an Australian author at all, but I am going to show you some books that I have got here sitting beside me to recommend to you. With the exception of the first one I'm going to start with, which is The Dry by Jane Harper. I don't have a physical copy of this. I actually own the final book in the series, which was sent to me. I didn't realise when I put it on my wish list that it was the final book in the series that The Dry starts. I thought it was a standalone by Jane Harper. I have since found that out and have now borrowed the second book because I read The Dry on audio, and I will read the second and third books. So we have The Dry, Force of Nature, and Exiles, all by Jane Harper. They are mystery crime books that I think are fantastic. They are written by an Australian author. Jane Harper is an Australian author, and they are set in Australia, so they will fit for the set in Australia prompt. The Dry would fit for a hot setting and orange on the cover, and the Exiles would fit for, I think, both as well. Force of Nature is not in a hot setting. It's actually in a cooler area of Australia, but it's set in Australia, so it works for that prompt. I haven't read it yet, so I don't know what else it would work for. If you like mysteries, crime books, that sort of thing, I highly recommend. I think Jane Harper is a fantastic author. I really enjoyed The Dry. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of them. But yeah, so that is the series of, it's called the Aaron Folks series. Aaron Folks is the main character, who is the investigator in the novels as well. I'm going to move now into some more mysteries. I do have these arranged in genre, so I'm going to talk to you about some more mysteries. Next up we have The Bluffs by Kyle Perry. This is another, like I said, a mystery. This is actually set in Australia. It is a girls go missing. We have to figure out what happened and why, along with the main characters. I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It will work for set in Australia. It's not actually hot. Tasmania isn't hot in general, and this is set specifically somewhere that isn't hot. So really, I think this would only fit for set in Australia, but it is nonetheless an Australian mystery book, which I recommend. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, so there's that one. Then I want to talk to you about The Killing Code by Ellie Marnie. This one is by an Australian author, but set in the States, but you can still read it because it's by an Australian author. It is a murder mystery spy novel. It's actually historical fiction as well. It is set during the Second World War in the States, and we follow a bunch of different code breakers, female code breakers. It does have a sapphic romance between two of the main characters, so it will work for LGBTQIA+. But yeah, This is a really great book. I really enjoyed it. I haven't grabbed off my shelf, but I would also recommend the Every series by Ellie Marnie as well. This is a young adult series. They're right there, so I'll just grab them. This is the first one, Every Breath. So we have Every Breath, Every Word, and Every Move. So this is a young adult Sherlock Holmes retelling. We follow Rachel Watts and James Moriarty as they solve some murders that are going on in Melbourne. So it fits for set in Australia. It fits for young adult. There is a little bit of orange on the cover, so it'll work for that one as well. The second one is going to fit for young adult and set in Australia. And the third one would actually fit for hot setting, orange on the cover, young adult and set in Australia. So this one would cover quite a few prompts. I really enjoyed this series. I thought it was incredibly well written. I love Ellie Marnie's writing style. Yeah, I just highly recommend anything by her, but those are the books that I've read. Okay, I'm going to move over now to Liane Moriarty. I'm going to recommend Liane Moriarty as an Australian author, and I'm going to say, basically, I have read, I think, most of her books at this point. Definitely haven't read her most recent one, which is Apples Never Fall. I have it on my shelf, but I haven't read it yet. I've read most of her books. The one I have got here waiting for me to show you is Truly Madly Guilty. These are contemporary contemporary suspense, shall we say. They're not mysteries, they don't fall into thriller mystery category, but there is definitely an element of suspense. Oftentimes there is some kind of illegal action that has taken place that we are then trying to figure out what happened, and we are having that revealed to us throughout the books. But we also are dealing with a lot of domestic thriller. We're dealing with a lot of domestic things between families and between within families and between families. I really like Liane Moriarty as an author. I know there are quite a few people on BookTube who people are very divided about her. A lot of people love her, a lot of people don't. I personally think she's fantastic. I really enjoy her books. My favourites are Truly Madly Guilty and Big Little Lies. Big Little Lies is probably her most famous. It was turned into a mini-series, which they changed to be set in America. It is not. The book is set in Australia. They are all set in Australia. Check out covers for any that have orange on the cover because they all have numerous different covers. This one obviously does not have orange on the cover, so it wouldn't work for that. It is set in Australia, so it would work for that one. I think that's all that Truly Madly Guilty would work for, but I'm pretty sure some of the other ones would work for some of the other prompts. But yeah, I really enjoy Liane Moriarty's writing style and her characters. I think she does fantastic characters, so I recommend anything by Liane Moriarty, particularly this one, Truly Madly Guilty, and also Big Little Lies. So I have 3 different contemporaries to talk to you about that are just kind of straight contemporaries, and then I have one that would be considered contemporary with some fantastical elements. So I have Sugar by Carly Nugent. This is a young adult contemporary about a young woman called Persephone. She has diabetes, so there's diabetes rep in there. It's about her life post a year after her father has died. So there's a lot of talk about grief in here. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was really well written. I can't speak to the diabetes rep because I'm not diabetic, but from what I've heard, is great diabetes rep. So it would cover set in Australia and young adult, and I think hot setting. I'm not sure where it's set exactly, but I'm pretty sure that it's quite hot when this story is taking place. So yeah, highly recommend. Really enjoyed it, and hopefully you'll pick it up. Then we have The Yield by Tara June Winch. This is a story about a young woman who goes back to her hometown because her grandmother is dying, and there is a company who is trying to essentially bulldoze the town, destroy the town in order to make way for a mine, I believe, and she gets involved in trying to stop that from happening. This would actually cover quite a few different of the prompts. So it has orange on the cover, so it would fit for that one. Tara June Winch is an Indigenous Australian, so it will fit for that prompt. It is set in Australia, so it will fit for that prompt, and it is set in a hot part of Australia, so it would fit for that prompt as well. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was fantastically written. I love Tara June Winch's writing style. I think that she has a really fantastic way of getting into characters and portraying the kind of inner workings of characters, but also telling a really fun, interesting story at the same time. So definitely recommend that one. Then I have After Story by Larissa Barrett. This is another contemporary that I've absolutely loved. I really enjoy Larissa Barrett's writing style. I think that she is a very intelligent, very clever writer who writes really great characters. So this is the third book of hers that I've read. So she writes both fiction and non-fiction. This one is a fiction as well. This is a contemporary story about a young woman who is trying to reconnect with her mother. The family has a lot of family trauma and she's trying to reconnect with her mother. Her way of doing that is she takes her mum on a literary tour of the UK, but that is so out of her mother's area of expertise, out of her mother's interest, that it kind of doesn't entirely work. I love this. I thought it was so well written. I really enjoyed the perspectives. You get both perspectives, the mother and the daughter. This will fit again for orange on the cover. Larissa Barrett is an Indigenous author, so it will fit for that prompt as well. But yeah, highly recommend. From there, I think I'm going to go to these two books. So this one is a contemporary with some fantastical elements to it. This is Too Much Lip by Melissa Lukashenko. This follows Kerry Salter, who again, similar to The Yield, goes back to her hometown and is trying again to stop some people from, I'm not 100%, I can't remember what, but stop white people from encroaching on country, basically. This is the second book of Melissa Lukashenko's that I've read. I also read Mullumbimby. I don't own that one anymore. I didn't like it as much as Too Much Lip, but I still enjoyed it. It was still a 3-star read. I really like the way that Larissa Barrett builds characters. Her characters are very, not quite grey, morally grey, but very not quite likable. They're very in your face, and I really enjoyed that. Like I said, there's some fantastical elements in this one as well, and I just think it was really well written. This one and Sorry actually also, this one, both of these would work for indie or self-pub as well, because they are both published by University of Queensland Press, which is an independent Australian publishing house. This one is also written by an Australian Aboriginal author, so it would work for that prompt. It would work for set in Australia, and it would work for a hot setting, so got a few covered there as well. This other one that I showed you is a tiny little middle grade. It is about Mia rescuing a black cockatoo. She explores the fragile connections of family and culture and discovers her own inner strength. It is written by Carl Merrison and Hakia Hustler, both of whom are Aboriginal Australian authors. So this would work for middle grade, it would work for set in Australia, it would work for Aboriginal author, and it would work for indie publishing because this one is published by Magabala Books, which is another independent Aboriginal publishing house in Australia. So that one would get you that prompt, all those prompts, and it's very short, so quite fun, nice little read, recommend. We're going to move now over to historical fiction, and I have two middle grades to show you. The first one is quite a small little middle grade, and it's very young, as is Black Cockatoo, very young middle grades, but they are still books that would count should you wish to read them. I still enjoyed them. I thought they were great. This one is Yinti Desert Child by Pat Lowe and Jimmy Pike. This is about a young Aboriginal boy living in the centre of Australia and what he gets up to, and him seeing his first white man. I don't actually know when it's set, but it is historical. It would actually fit for a number of different prompts as well. It would fit for Aboriginal author, it would fit for young adult middle grade, it would fit for orange on the cover, hot setting, and set in Australia. So quite a few there as well. Then we have Who Am I by Anita Heiss. This is another middle grade, and this is historical fiction as well. This follows a young Aboriginal girl who is taken from her mother and placed in a number of different white homes as a way to try and assimilate her, wipe out her culture and make her white. This was a practice that happened even in the 60s and 70s so reasonably recently, and is not talked about often enough, but this is a book about that. The people who were taken are called the Stolen Generation. It is a very shameful part of Australian history, but it is part of our history and I think is definitely worth reading about. And I think this is an excellent book to start with to help you to find out more about that part of our history. So it's hard, but it's definitely worth it and I recommend. This is also by an Australian Aboriginal author. It is middle grade, set in Australia, and it's set in a hot place. So it'll get you all that as well. I'm going to go very briefly now to non-fiction. I've not read this one, but I'm going to mention it here because I definitely need to, and I think that it's worth reading. This is Dark Emu by Bruce Pascoe. This is a... what does it say on the back? If we look at the evidence presented to us by the explorers and explain to our children that Aboriginal people did build houses, did build dams, did sow, irrigate and till the land, did alter the course of rivers, did sew their clothes, and did construct a system of pan-continental government that generated peace and prosperity, then it is likely we will admire and love our land all the more. Pascoe puts forward a compelling argument for a reconsideration of the hunter-gatherer label for pre-colonial Aboriginal Australians. The evidence insists that Aboriginal people right across the continent were using domesticated plants, sowing, harvesting, irrigating and storing. Behaviours inconsistent with the hunter-gatherer tag. So the fact that Aboriginal Australians were considered hunter-gatherers and in fact were considered not human has been a method by which white Australians and Europeans Europeans who settled here and then white Australians have made it allowable for us to take over country. And this shows how wrong that is. I intend to read this at some point. I probably should read it during the Australian Readathon. But anyway, I think it's definitely something that should be read by a lot of Australians and people around the world in general. So that's my recommendation. And it will work for a number of prompts as well. It will work for Australian Aboriginal, it will work for set in Australia, it will work for orange on the cover, it will work for hot setting. Next up, we have The Interrogation of a Charlotte Wolf. This is the first book in a trilogy by Amberlynn Quay Molina. This is a dystopian story set in a place that is similar to Australia, if not meant to be exactly Australia. I really enjoyed this trilogy. I have not finished it yet. I intend to, but this is the first one. I've read the first and second, and yeah, I really, really enjoyed them. And again, it will fit for a number of prompts. It will fit for young adult, Australian Aboriginal author, hot setting. A lot of these do, but yeah, highly recommend. Another book that I would like to recommend that I don't currently have on me, I have linked to someone, and is also a dystopian story, sort of, although it's allegorical as well, and that is Terra Nullius by Claire G. Coleman. This book absolutely blew me away.
Hello, it's Editing Mel here. I thought that I had caught the fact that the camera had stopped recording quickly enough that I wouldn't really miss anything. However, that is, as it turns out, not true. So, I was in the middle of talking to you about Terra Nullius by Claire G. Coleman. This is an absolutely amazing book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Highly recommend. It is speculative science fiction, dystopian, and yeah, it's fantastically written. I really, really, really enjoyed it. There are a few different versions of the cover. I've put up the orange on the cover version, so if you find that one, that will count. It will count for written by an Indigenous Australian author. It will count as being in a hot setting. I would count it for set in Australia as well, although it's not 100% obvious, but it pretty much is. So yeah, it'll count for all of those things. I then moved into talking about fantasy, and the next book that I want to talk to you about is the book that I then was talking to you about. So we're going straight from there into fantasy written by Australian authors. And
sorry if there's been a slight change in the angle. My battery died. Anyway, new battery in. Let's keep talking about Ateli Coulter and the Narrowway Hunt by Rhiannon Williams. This is a young adult fantasy. I don't know much more than that, but I've heard really good things. My friend Ellie absolutely loves it, and I definitely want to read it. It would work for young adult. I think it's middle grade actually, but it would work for that prompt, and that's about it, I think. But yeah, this is one that you could read. Then we have another middle grade fantasy, which is Esme's Wish. This is the first book in, I think it's going to be a trilogy, although the first and second ones are the only ones that are out. I've read both of them. The second one would work for this as well. It is it's a fantasy, portal fantasy about Esme who travels through a portal into another world. I enjoyed them. I thought they were pretty fun, and it's the kind of thing that I think if you like fantasy and dragons, portal fantasy, you would enjoy this one. Like I said, it is a middle grade, so it would work for that prompt. And then we have Rowan of Rin by Emily Rodda. I personally have not read this one either, but I have read other Emily Rodda books, and she writes just middle grade fun fantasy books, quite well written, and yeah, just a lot of fun. Emily Rodda is an Australian author that I would recommend, who I think is a really prolific Australian author, so you could search and find any number of books by Emily Rodda. Then we have Sabriel by Garth Nix. This is one of my favourite books, my favourite series. This is the first book. It's actually now 6 books. It was, when it was first written, it was a trilogy, and I think Garth Nix has written other books since then. This is, like I said, a fantasy book. It's set in another world, and it's about a young woman who lives on one side of the wall. She's attending school, but her father's from the other side of the wall. On the other side of the wall is magic, on this side of the world is technology, and her father dies and she becomes the Aborson, and the Aborson is the person that is kind of the necromancer who stops the dead from going into life, basically. I mean, I say basically, there's more to it than that. I really enjoy this series. I think Garth Nix is a fantastic writer. I love his writing style, I love his storylines, I love his characters. Again, I highly recommend the Sabriel series. This is actually one of the host's favourites. I would get you that prompt. Also, this would get you young adult prompt as well. And then the final book that I'm going to mention is yet another book that I have not read yet, and that is The Shadow of the Winter Moon by Cam Sinclair. Cam actually sent this to me for an honest review, and I have not yet read it. Sorry. But it is a grimdark fantasy. I don't know really much more about it than that, other than the fact that it is self-published. So I wanted to include it because it would fit in the indie published section of this recommendations video for the Australian Readathon. There are many more Australian books. There are many more Australian authors. I highly recommend that you just Google Australian authors, but these are some of the recommendations that I have for you today. Like I said, go and check out Meredith's announcement video. She has done a bunch of recommendations in that video, as has Ren, so go and check out their announcement video. Go and check out Steph's announcement video just because Steph's great, but Steph will be putting up a recommendations video as well. I'm not sure if Ren is, but I'm pretty sure Meredith isn't. But still, check out their channels, announcement videos, etc. And yeah, that's everything that I want to talk to you about today. Like I said, the announcement video with all the information that you need to participate in the readathon, including the bingo board that I've been talking about non-stop, is in the description below. So if you'd like to join us, we would love it if you would like to join us. Please do so. Go check that video out to get all that info. Please comment below if you would like to participate in the readathon. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Are there any of these books that you're interested in reading? Comment all of that in the description below. If you'd like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me an Australian animal emoji, kangaroo or koala or something along those lines. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go and follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.